Something you may have noticed with my Mellow Gaming Recommends videos is that I have a tendency to move more towards the more obscure and unknown video games, or just retro games that have been overlooked over the years. Now, this is mostly because there's no point me going on about games you've already heard about a million times. You don't need me telling you that Super Mario Bros. 2 was originally a Japanese game called Doki Doki Panic. There's about 4,000 YouTubers doing that already, and there's probably one who's editing an episode on that subject right now. No. I like to look at something a little bit more obscure, something that maybe got overlooked and deserves more praise, and today's game fits those categories. Today's game is by a developer called Nathan Meunier, and it is called Missile Cards, and I think it's well worth a look. This is why I recommend it. Missile Cards is one of them genre mashup games you all know I love so much. It's shockingly easy to explain the game's core premise too. It's Missile Command with cards, like almost literally. The game plays out in a turn-based manner where, on each turn, a conveyor belt moves a selection of cards towards a drop-off point. The cards represent either weapons for you to fire, bonus abilities for various purposes I'll explain as we go on, or comets that will, upon reaching the end of the conveyor, fall into the playfield and move turn by turn towards a base under your protection. On each turn, you grab a weapon or ability card and move it up to the charging point that is essentially your hand. As turns move on, these weapons charge up at varying speeds until you fire them at the comets, which by now will be hurtling towards your bases. As the game is turn-based, you'll need to be balancing the time it takes to charge the attack with the distance the comets are away from your base, keeping in mind that your weapons, with few exceptions, will always aim for the nearest comet. The closer the comet is to the base, the more points you'll score. The game is over either when you've destroyed all the comets in the deck or when your base has been obliterated. There's a sort of two-tier system to your base's survivability. The large base in the middle has health points, indicated by the yellow dots beneath it. If one of these flaming death orbs has a big old 2 on it, then it will take 2 points off that base. When that base loses all its points, it's game over. The smaller bases can take 1 hit from a comet of any strength, and a second hit on the same base will cause a chain reaction and another game over. This all sounds pretty simple, right? Well, Missile Cards likes to throw a few spanners in the works that make the game become a turn management head scratcher of near Fire Emblem on hard mode levels. As you may have noticed, all the comets have numbers on them, indicating the damage they will do. That's also their hit points, so if a comet has a 4 on it, you'll need to hit it with a weapon that has points totaling 4 themselves. Ideally, this would be a missile with 4 strength of its own. That would be an efficient way to do things, and as you go on, efficiency will be a skill you'll have to learn. Sometimes though, having the perfect counter to an attack is impossible. The cards are randomised, so you're pretty likely to be left in the lurch at times and maybe even have to make a sacrifice play to survive. This becomes more important as more types of attacks are being flung at you. Before long, you'll start to see nukes in the attacks. Nukes take at least 2 hits to deal with. The number value they have represents how much damage they need to receive in order to be made inert. Then you'll need to follow up your attack with a second hit, which only needs to be 1 point to strike a killing blow. Fail to defuse a nuke with your explosives, which admittedly sounds like an horrendously bad idea, and the nuke will end your game when it lands. Like, that's it. Instant game over. If it's defused though, it'll act just like a regular comet, so now a complication is added where you'll need to start thinking 2 moves ahead to destroy an attack. Now I'm going to go deep into gameplay mechanics in this next section here, so strap yourself in. What, you thought we were already neck deep in mechanics? Nah, mate, if you've ever seen my Assault Android Characters videos, you know that I'm only just getting started on this subject. So, nukes are a pain in the arse, right? But they're only the beginning. On stage 3 you'll have a little thing to deal with called solar flares. Solar flares will appear on the conveyor of impending doom a few times as the round goes on, and they do one super irritating thing. They instantly remove all charge from your weapons. This can be especially irritating if a comet is a little too close to your base for a recharge to fully happen in time to fire back. Luckily, around now, you're introduced to a new weapon type that can charge in 1 turn. These are super handy to have if a solar flare is about to happen, as you'll only lose 1 turn firing back. If you don't have one though, you'll have to consider firing a charged weapon early, which will mean less points for you. And as each stage has a high score clearing based challenge to complete, you may find yourself hating the solar flare as I did. It's okay though, you've got this. On stage 4 you'll be introduced to hacks. These appear on the conveyor, and when they reach the end they'll either take one of your weapons, or if you have no weapons currently in your hand, they'll deal 1 point of damage to your main base. To counter this, you have these cards that allow you to pull a Johnny Lee Miller and hack the hackers to prevent them launching an attack. On stage 4 I found trying to keep a counter hacking card in your hand at all times pretty handy, as the loss of a weapon at a key moment can be far more damaging than having to work with just 3 spare weapon slots for a while. On stage 5 you'll have this giant ass enemy spaceship above you that is dropping bombs and drills, and oh, it's opening. Yup, that's a giant laser. Should have known. Now the bombs aren't too much to worry about, they operate the same as comets from before. It just makes more sense for bombs to be falling from a spaceship than comets. That's context related game design, folks. Also, you have one less turn to make your attacks because of the big spaceship. The drills are a new enemy though, they can bore through any shields you've built up, be it through upgrades or via the shield ability card. Luckily they're dealt with the same way as bombs and comets. The laser is a problem though, it will fire and it will take 2 health off, so you'll need to have the main base strong enough to handle that. There's a regeneration perk in the upgrades menu to help combat this if you're feeling saucy and fancy taking on the final stage with a default 3 health points. I don't suggest trying that though, mainly because I'm a coward. Now this is all sounding a little bit doom and gloom, right? I've shown you all the various ways you can be destroyed in missile cards, but not really shown you how you can fight back. Luckily the game has a system of upgrades and more powerful cards you can unlock, which will help you in your fight in defeating the enemies. Yeah, there's an unending torrent of death heading your way. That's normal. Chin up mate, it's not all bad. Let's have a look at what we can do to make life a little easier for you. For starters, there's these little glowy bits floating around. They appear every time an enemy weapon is destroyed, even if they get destroyed by hitting themselves with your base. This card right here is a kind of tractor beam glowy bit vacuum, and you use it to suck them up. Now this isn't needed to finish a stage, hell it's actually possible to finish stages using no missiles, believe it or not, but that's not important right now. What is important is collecting these glowy thingies so they give you points to buy new cards for your deck that have special abilities. These cards are a mixture of defensive and offensive abilities, and you can have up to 3 in your deck at one time. One can fire a missile at any target you like, which is handy because your normal missiles always aim for the nearest enemy attack. This is good for clearing out something that may be trouble later. There's a card that pops a single hit shield up over your smaller bases, which can be super useful for mitigating the damage from an inert but still falling nuke. Another card that I've come to love fires a volley of lasers that do 2 damage each. This is great for clearing out weaker attacks and can save you quite a few cards. There's also cards for making repairs or to double the amount of those yellow bit things you collect, which is great for unlocking more cards. Another method of upgrading comes from the game's simple XP system. Every time you win you're given some XP, and every few wins you'll get an upgrade point. These upgrades directly affect your base. One gives your main base extra health points, one provides a shield for the smaller bases, another, as mentioned earlier, provides a health regen for your main base. The one you may want to grab early though is the base laser. This gives you a laser that pumps out a decent amount of damage, depending on how many times you've upgraded it. That can really get you out of a pinch. You power it by discarding a few cards, each one charging up the laser a little. I usually throw in batteries, which are normally used to charge your weapons quickly, or the tractor beam cards. I tend to do this early on when those cards aren't quite so important, although by discarding them you do risk being without a battery on the card conveyor when you really need it. So yeah, there's a lot going on in this game that at first just seemed like Missile Command crossed with Solitaire. As you get better at the game, you'll be timing out the charges of multiple weapons with how far away the enemy attacks are, deciding if it's worth taking a hit to a small base to save damage to the larger one. When I first started playing, I'd just chuck every weapon I could onto the charge before realising that's a bad thing to do. Any of your weapons that drop off the end of the conveyor go back into your deck and will appear randomly later on, so it's worth just letting them go for now. One thing that's really impressed me with Missile Cards and its developer Nathan Meunier is how he has iterated and tweaked the game during and after development, showing a determination to make the best game possible. If you go looking through my Let's Plays on this channel, you'll find that I originally covered this game back in 2016 when it was in alpha. A few suggestions made in that video were worked into the game later on, such as how you always have a weapon on the conveyor at the start to avoid rounds where you'd get a load of comets and no way to defend yourself. You'll still get the occasional bad deal you can't win, but that happens in many card games. It's all part of the way card games work. That's how far he's taken the card game aspect of the design. On top of that, there were smaller tweaks made, such as the AP you lose when skipping a turn being reduced to 1, to avoid scenarios where you couldn't place any stronger weapons early on. There's a few little design elements I really like too, such as the bases being different heights on some stages, forcing you to think across multiple lanes when deciding when to launch your attacks. And recently launched was update 1.0.9 that included a quick restart feature, which will come in handy when you've been well and truly Kenshiro'd.
お前はもう死んでいる。何？
I've also got to take a moment to mention how damn good the music is. It was all done by Nathan himself using a program called Let's Make Music software, or LMMS as it's known. The tunes are chiptune in their nature, dirty in tone, and have that constantly driving forwards towards doom feel. I'm especially fond of the level select music, which you're listening to right now. This game may be relatively small, but I'd say it can provide a good 10 hours or so of play to complete all the challenges and bonus missions. Not a bad amount of time for something that's only a few quid. Plus, despite not being a massive hit on Steam, it's been getting updated regularly, and there's an iOS version that was recently released which will hopefully get it played by a wider audience. Any updates being made to the iOS version are transferring to the PC version too, so you're not getting left behind if you prefer playing on a big screen. This game is, in my opinion, a fair bit of a step up in design and gameplay from Nathan's previous games, such as This Book is a Dungeon, a twine-based text adventure RPG, which I played on the channel quite a while back, and Go to Bed Survive the Night, which I'm yet to play. He's got a couple of upcoming projects such as Doom Parade and Nuclear Golf, which is being made with touch fight games and looks pretty mental. So yeah, check them out. Nathan included this handy screen in the game where you can also follow his work on Twitter, check out his website for updates, and destroy humanity? Huh. Well, that got a little bit dark at the end, didn't it? Thanks for watching, guys, especially if you got this far in the video, and that was a pretty quick turnaround for me on these episodes. It's been only about 6 weeks since the last one. Anyway, I'm going to get to work on the next episode, which is going to be a retro game. So, thanks for watching. I'll catch you later. Bye!